peace. It feels like a word we hear a lot, maybe even crave. But establishing it, guaranteeing it across the globe, that seems, well, incredibly complex, maybe even impossible, looking at the world today.
It really does. We see so much conflict, division, profound disagreements.
Exactly. But imagine, just for a moment, turning back the clock to a time also fraught with tension, 1963.
The Cold War.
Right. The Cold War was freezing the globe. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a recent, terrifying memory, pushing the world to the brink.
A very tense time.
And yet, amidst that palpable tension, a clear, comprehensive blueprint for universal peace was laid out. It addressed everything from, individual rights right up to global governance.
And importantly, it wasn't just addressed to a select group.
No, deliberately and hopefully to all men of goodwill.
It's a remarkable document, and the source for this deep dive is that blueprint you provided. The encyclical Pacem in Terris, or Peace on Earth, issued by Pope John XXIII in April of that year.
Pacem in Terris.
Its significance isn't just in its message, but its timing and its intended audience, explicitly reaching beyond the Catholic faithful to address the entire world.
So our mission today, diving into this single powerful source material, is to unpack this encyclical.
Right.
We want to extract its core principles for establishing universal peace, understand its unique argument for how order in the universe should mirror order in human society.
That cosmic connection is key.
And see what it says about rights, duties, and relationships at every single level, from the individual person to the state and ultimately to the entire global community.
What were the essential nuggets Pope John XXIII really wanted everyone to grasp at that critical moment?
Exactly. What were those essential, perhaps surprising bits of knowledge he felt compelled to share with everyone on Earth?
Well, we can explore the deep foundation he builds for peace, the kind of society he argues is necessary, the principles that should govern relations between nations, and finally, the surprising call to action he issues for individuals and the global community.
Okay, let's dive deep into Pacem in Terris. Where does he begin?
The encyclical begins by laying a fundamental premise for peace right at the start. Pope John XXIII doesn't start with politics or economics. He starts with a cosmic perspective.
Cosmic. How so?
He asserts that true peace on earth can only be established and guaranteed by diligently observing a divinely established order.
An order established by God.
Yes. He points to the marvelous order we see all around us in the universe, in the natural world. He even mentions how modern science and technology reveal this order in breathtaking detail.
So, like the laws of physics, biology.
Precisely. From the smallest living organism to the vast forces of nature, he sees this order as a reflection of God's greatness, his wisdom, and his goodness in creating everything out of nothing.
So before talking about human structures,
Yeah.
he looks at the grand design of creation and says, look, there's an order here, and peace depends on aligning ourselves with that order.
Exactly. He quotes the psalmist, marveling at God's works and wisdom, and then crucially, he connects this to humanity. He reminds us that man was created in God's own image, uniquely endowed with intelligence and free will, and given a special place, made Lord of creation.
A special place in this order.
Yes. The psalmist describes man as made a little less than the angels, crowned with glory and honor, with all things subjected under his feet. It's a perspective that immediately elevates the dignity and potential of the human person.
That's a powerful starting point, seeing humanity within this vast, ordered cosmos. But then, he immediately pivots to the stark reality, doesn't he?
He does. The perfect order in the universe contrasts sharply with the disunity and chaos we often see among individuals and nations. This is the central tension he's addressing.
The is versus the ought, in a way.
You could say that. And he acknowledges that this disunity might lead some to conclude that human relationships are ultimately just governed by force.
Might makes right.
By the survival of the fittest or the most powerful. But the encyclical firmly rejects this. It asserts there's a different law at play in human affairs, a law inscribed on man's inmost being by the Creator himself, revealed through conscience.
An inner law.
Yes. He quotes Romans. Men show the work of the law written in their hearts. Their conscience bears witness to them. This inherent moral order, distinct from the physical laws of nature, is where we must look for the principles governing human relations.
So the foundation for peace isn't just external rules or power dynamics, it's an internal moral compass that points towards a specific kind of order.
Exactly. And this internal law dictates how individuals should relate to each other, how citizens and public officials should interact, how states should deal with one another.
And even how we relate to the whole world community.
Right, which he saw as increasingly necessary because of our shared interests.
This builds directly to what he identifies as the core principle for a well-regulated human society, the human person itself.
This is the absolute bedrock of the entire encyclical. He argues that any truly productive and peaceful society must start with the acceptance of this principle. Each individual man is a person, not a cog in a machine,
Not just an object.
endowed with intelligence and free will. And flowing directly and necessarily from this nature are inherent rights and duties.
Rights and duties, both sides of the coin.
And he uses those strong, non-negotiable terms. These rights and duties are universal, applying to everyone, inviolable, meaning they cannot legitimately be broken or disregarded,
Cannot be violated.
and therefore completely inalienable, they cannot be given away or taken away.
Universal, inviolable, and alienable. That language feels incredibly strong, especially for 1963. Rights that belong to you simply because you are a human being.
It is strong language, deliberately so. And he adds another layer, noting that divine revelation, the Christian understanding of redemption, becoming sons of God, heirs to eternal glory, increases this estimate of personal dignity incomparably.
So dignity is inherent by nature, but faith deepens our understanding of it.
Yes, faith amplifies it.
This foundational dignity and the inalienable rights flowing from it lead to a critical section, the detailed list of specific rights. This part really spells out what that dignity means in practice.
It's a very comprehensive list, reflecting a holistic view of the human person. He starts with the fundamental right to life and the necessities for a decent life.
The basics.
Right. But it's not just about survival. It includes bodily integrity and the means necessary for proper development: food, clothing, shelter, medical care, rest, and essential social services.
So a social safety net is implied there.
Definitely. What's particularly striking is his emphasis on support for those deprived of livelihood through no fault of their own,
Okay.
specifically mentioning situations like ill health, disability, widowhood, old age, or unemployment. It's a recognition of vulnerability and the community's obligation.
So it's a right not just to exist, but to exist with the conditions needed for human flourishing.
Precisely. He then moves to moral and cultural rights.
What does that include?
This includes the right to be respected, to a good name. He highlights the freedom to seek truth, freedom of speech and publication.
But with limits.
Yes, within the necessary limits of the moral order and common good, he specifies. Also, the freedom to choose and practice a profession. And he explicitly includes the right to accurate information about public events.
Accurate information about public events.
Wow, that feels incredibly relevant and even prescient today, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. He then builds on this with the right to share in cultural benefits, receive a good general education, and obtain technical or professional training.
Education as a right.
Yes. And it also stresses creating opportunities for gifted individuals to pursue advanced studies and take on positions of responsibility based on their merit.
So equal opportunity based on talent.
Right. And significantly, the right to worship God according to the dictates of one's own conscience and to profess religion privately and publicly.
Freedom of religion. He roots this deeply, quoting early Christian thought, on rendering homage to God as the very condition of our birth. He also links it to Pope Leo XIII's idea of true freedom, which safeguards human dignity.
This isn't just passive tolerance, it's an active right to practice one's faith.
Exactly. He then addresses the right to choose one's state in life.
Like getting married or...
Yes, whether to form a family through marriage or embrace religious life. He strongly emphasizes the family, founded on freely contracted, one, and indissoluble marriage, as the natural primary unit of society.
The family is the core building block.
And he insists the family's interests must be given special consideration in all social, economic, and moral matters. And parents, he states, have the primary right and duty for the support and education of their children.
He's building the structure of peace outwards from the individual to the most basic social unit, the family.
And from there to the economic sphere. He asserts the inherent right to have the opportunity to work and to exercise personal initiative in that work.
The right to work and initiative in work.
Yes, working conditions must be suitable for age, like adolescence, and for the needs and responsibilities of women. It also includes the right to engage in economic activities suited to one's level of responsibility.
Okay.
And critically, the right to a just wage. He defines a just wage as one determined by justice, sufficient to support a family in reasonable comfort.
A living wage, essentially.
Essentially, yes. He references Pope Pius XII on work being a duty, but also corresponding to a right to livelihood.
The encyclical is very specific about economic rights being tied directly to human dignity and family needs.
Absolutely. And while he affirms the right to private property, including productive goods, seeing it as a means of asserting personality, exercising responsibility, and providing security,
The right to own property.
he immediately adds a crucial nuance. Private property entails a social obligation.
The balance. It's not just about owning things. It's about the responsibility that ownership carries towards the broader community.
Exactly. Ownership isn't absolute, it comes with duties. He then discusses the right of meeting and association.
Freedom of assembly.
Yes, our social nature means we have a right to meet, form associations, organize them freely, and exercise initiative within them. He highlights the importance of intermediate groups.
What are those? Like unions, community groups.
Exactly. Unions, professional organizations, community groups as urgent necessities to achieve aims beyond individual capacity and to safeguard personal freedom and dignity.
These mediating structures between the individual and the state seem really important in his vision.
They are vital. Then there's the right to emigrate and immigrate, freedom of movement within one state, and the right to emigrate for just reasons and take up residence elsewhere.
Freedom of movement.
And he makes the profound point that citizenship doesn't strip away one's membership in the human family or universal society.
Recognizing a universal human identity that transcends national borders, that's powerful.
Yes. And finally, political rights. The right and opportunity to take an active part in public life and contribute to the common welfare.
The right to participate.
He quotes Pope Pius XII. Man is the subject, basis, and purpose of society, and adds the right to legal protection that is effective, unbiased, and just what he calls juridical security, immune from arbitrary attack.
So it's a sweeping list of rights, covering everything from basic survival and family life to cultural participation, economic activity, freedom of movement, and political engagement. It's a holistic picture of human dignity.
And immediately following this affirmation of rights, he makes an equally critical point by turning to duties.
Okay, the other side.
He emphasizes that these natural rights are inextricably bound up with as many duties. They flow from the same natural law.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The right to live implies the duty to preserve your life. The right to a decent living implies the duty to live in a becoming manner. The right to seek truth implies the duty to search for it deeply and widely.
You can't just claim your rights. You have corresponding responsibilities. It's a two-way street.
Absolutely. And he discusses reciprocity and collaboration. One person's right automatically creates a corresponding duty in others to recognize and respect that right.
My right implies your duty.
Exactly. He uses a memorable analogy. Neglecting duties while claiming rights is like building a house with one hand and tearing it down with the other. It's self-defeating.
Huh, that's a good one.
He states that men must actively live together, consult each other, and collaborate, contributing to a civic order where these rights and duties are observed.
So building a just and peaceful society is a collective enterprise requiring everyone's participation and respect for others.
Yes. And this collaboration isn't just about observing rights duties. It's needed for providing the means of livelihood and engaging in the vast complexities modern civilization demands.
It's practical, too.
Right. And he underscores the importance of responsibility and freedom. A society truly based on human dignity requires personal decision, initiative, conviction, and a sense of responsibility.
Not just following orders.
No, a society built primarily on force or coercion, he argues, is inhuman and an obstacle to man's true progress and perfection.
That links back beautifully to the idea that authority should be moral, not just coercive.
It does. Building on this foundation of rights and duties, he lays out the 4 indispensable pillars for a truly human society, one that is well-ordered, creative, and harmonious. Peace, he argues, rests on these 4.
Okay, what are they?
First, truth. Acknowledging mutual rights and duties, he quotes St. Paul. Putting away lying, speak ye the truth.
Honesty and realism about our obligations.
Second, justice. Effectively respecting those rights and conscientiously performing those duties.
Fairness and follow-through.
Third, charity, love. Feeling others' needs as our own, sharing goods generously, and striving together for the highest spiritual values.
Empathy and active solidarity.
And fourth, freedom. Using means consistent with human dignity, reason, and a sense of responsibility.
Acting responsibly within the framework. Truth, justice, charity, freedom. Those are the 4 cornerstones. They sound simple, but living them out, especially charity in a political context, is complex.
Oh, absolutely. He emphasizes that society is primarily a spiritual reality. It's a place where enlightened men share knowledge, claim rights, fulfill duties, pursue spiritual goods.
It's more than just economics and politics.
Much more. He sees these underlying spiritual values as the guide for everything else. Culture, economics, institutions, politics, laws. The order he envisions is incorporeal, founded on truth, built through justice, animated by love, maintaining equilibrium while safeguarding freedom.
So the health of a society depends fundamentally on these intangible, spiritual, and moral values being lived out.
And where does this universal, absolute, immutable moral order come from? He explicitly states its source is the transcendent God, who is the first truth and sovereign good, the ultimate source of vitality for society.
Okay.
He ties this to St. Thomas Aquinas, explaining that human reason and will depend on God's eternal law, which is divine reason.
Anchoring the entire framework, the rights, the duties, the pillars of society in a divine source.
Yes. Before moving to the next section, he pauses to highlight what he calls signs of the times.
What were those key signs he noted back then in 63 that felt significant?
First, he pointed to the progress of working men. He saw improving economic and social conditions and a growing movement of working men claiming their full range of rights, economic, social, political, cultural.
The rise of labor.
Right. Demanding to be treated as human beings with full dignity and a share in all sectors of society. Second, he noted the everywhere evident presence of women in public life.
Women's rights movements.
Yes. Their role growing rapidly, a growing awareness of their dignity, and demanding recognition of their rights and duties in both domestic and public life.
The huge shifts.
Third, political independence. Peoples attaining or on the way to political independence, signifying the end of colonial rule.
Decolonization.
He linked this global shift to a decline in complexes of inferiority or superiority based on national status, sex, or social position. And fourth, a widespread and growing conviction in equality.
Fighting discrimination.
Yes, a general belief in the equal natural dignity of all human beings, leading explicitly to a rejection of racial discrimination on a doctrinal level. He noted that this awareness of rights naturally leads to a recognition of duties.
So these weren't just isolated observations. He saw these global trends, the rise of labor, women, independent nations, the rejection of racial inequality as confirming the principles he was laying out.
That's the key point. He synthesizes this, suggesting that a society based on these rights and duties fosters a deeper understanding of spiritual and intellectual values, a grasp of truth, justice, charity, and freedom. It leads to a consciousness of membership in the human family and a better knowledge of God.
That provides the deep foundation of human dignity and inherent rights. Now let's move to how these principles should shape the relationship between individuals and public authorities, which is part 2 of the encyclical.
Okay. He starts by stating clearly that human society needs authority. It's necessary to preserve institutions and promote the interests of the community.
Government is necessary.
Yes. He grounds the origin of authority in God, citing St. Paul, there is no power but from God. But clarifies this means the existence of authority is from divine wisdom, not that every specific ruler is divinely appointed. Authority is necessary because society needs direction.
So the principle of authority itself is seen as necessary and rooted in the moral order.
Yes, but he immediately sets crucial limits on that authority. Public authority is not boundless.
It has limits.
It must govern by right reason and derives its binding force, its moral weight, from the moral order, which has God as its origin and end. He quotes Pope Pius XII, public authority shares in God's authority, meaning it must conform to it.
It's a derived power, not an absolute one, and its legitimacy depends on its adherence to a higher moral standard.
Exactly, and he stresses the inherently moral nature of authority. Ruling solely through threats, intimidation, or promises of rewards doesn't effectively lead citizens to contribute to the common good out of genuine conviction.
It doesn't inspire people.
And more importantly, it offends their dignity as persons. Authority, he argues, is primarily a moral force that appeals to the individual conscience and the duty to contribute voluntarily.
So it works from the inside out.
Because all persons are equal in dignity, no one can force another's internal compliance or conscience. Only God can judge the heart.
That's a powerful distinction. True authority inspires moral obligation from within, rather than simply demanding external compliance through fear or bribery.
And this distinction is key to understanding why state representatives only truly bind conscience if their authority is tied to God's authority. Obedience to just civil authorities, then, is seen as homage to God, which ennobles the individual.
And what about when a law conflicts with that higher moral order? What if a law is unjust?
That's addressed directly. Laws or decrees that contravene the moral order or God's will have no binding force in conscience.
No obligation to obey.
He uses the classic line from Acts, "We ought to obey God rather than men." Such laws, he states, undermine authority and are an abuse of power. He quotes St. Thomas Aquinas. A law that deviates from reason is unjust and essentially an act of violence.
So the moral legitimacy of a law, and thus its binding power, is not arbitrary. It's dependent on its alignment with the moral order.
Precisely. And Pope John XXIII is careful to note that this teaching is entirely consistent with democratic forms of government where the people choose their rulers and structures. The moral criteria apply regardless.
The purpose of this authority is key. What is the sole reason for civil authorities, according to the encyclical?
Explicitly, the common good. Authorities must exercise their power morally and in a way calculated to ensure and promote the welfare of the state.
The common good. How does he define that?
It includes the distinctive characteristics of each people, but it always must take the human person into account. It cannot exist without considering the individual's good.
It's not just an abstraction.
No. Every citizen has a right to share in it, and authorities must promote the interests of all, not just a select few. Justice and equity, he adds, may even demand giving greater attention to the weaker members of society.
That's a crucial point. The common good isn't just the average good or the good of the majority. It's a good that is centered on the dignity and full development of every person, with particular care for the vulnerable.
Yes, and the scope of the common good affects the whole man, body, and soul. Rulers must aim for both spiritual and material prosperity, always respecting the hierarchy of values where spiritual goods are higher.
Spiritual well-being is part of it.
He references Mater et Magistra, stating the common good requires social conditions that favor the full development of human personality. And, maybe surprisingly, measures for the common good must not jeopardize eternal salvation. They should even help individuals attain it.
Elevating the spiritual well-being and ultimate destiny of persons as part of the common good is a unique emphasis.
The encyclical then forcefully restates that the common good is best safeguarded when personal rights and duties are guaranteed. The chief concern of public authorities, quoting Pope Pius XII, is to safeguard the inviolable rights of the human person and to facilitate the performance of his duties.
Their principal duty.
Yes, a government that refuses to recognize or violates these rights fails its duty, and its decrees lack binding force.
This directly connects back to the long list of rights we discussed. Protecting those rights isn't just one task among many for the government. It's its primary purpose.
Exactly. Authorities must coordinate the exercise of rights so one person's actions don't obstruct others. They must safeguard and restore rights if violated.
Okay.
And they have a duty to create a climate where individuals can safeguard and fulfill their rights and duties readily. Because, he explains, inequities grow when authorities are deficient in the political, economic, and cultural spheres, making rights and duties ineffective in practice.
The government isn't just a passive referee. It has an active role in creating the environment where human dignity can flourish and rights can be exercised effectively.
Precisely. He gives a list of specific government actions for the common good.
Like what?
Promoting social and economic progress, providing essential services like roads, transport, communications, water, housing, medical care, social insurance. Also creating employment opportunities, ensuring a just wage, fostering responsibility in work, facilitating intermediate groups, ensuring cultural access.
That's a very broad and active mandate for government, covering infrastructure, social welfare, the economy, culture.
It is, but he immediately introduces a crucial caution about balancing intervention. Authorities must maintain a delicate balance.
How so?
They must avoid monopolizing advantages or, paradoxically, hindering the full exercise of rights while attempting to protect them. He quotes Mater et Magistra again. Authority must augment human freedom, not deprive it.
So, government action is necessary for the common good, but it must be done in a way that respects and enhances individual freedom and initiative, not crushes it. A tricky balance.
Very tricky. Moving to the structure of government, he says no single form is best, it depends on circumstances.
Makes sense.
However, a threefold division of powers, legislative, administrative, and judicial, is presented as in keeping with human nature, providing a necessary legal framework and protection.
Checks and balances are seen as inherently aligned with human nature and protective of rights.
But the structure itself isn't enough. It requires public officials to be competent, ethical, and dedicated, acting within the demands of the common good. Justice must guide administration, executives understand laws, courts be impartial, law must protect individuals and groups.
So the structure itself isn't enough. The integrity and capability of the people operating within that structure are essential.
Yes. And while a just legal system helps, modern life is complex. Laws can seem inadequate. Relations can be ambiguous, explosive.
Reality is messy.
Right. Officials need calmness, integrity, clear-sightedness, perseverance to see needs, and act promptly.
Acknowledging that real-world governance requires wisdom and flexibility beyond strict legalism.
Exactly. And he affirms the natural right to citizen participation in government.
People should be involved.
Yes. The degree varies, but it creates opportunities for service, helps authorities craft effective policies, and ensures vitality through succession.
Citizens aren't just subject to government. They have a right to be involved in it.
This leads to 3 modern demands on states arising from this awareness of dignity.
Okay.
1, a clear charter of fundamental human rights and a constitution. 2, a constitution defining the roles and limits of officials. 3, relations between citizens and authorities described in terms of rights and duties, with authorities' main function being to protect and promote these.
These points sound very much like the requirements for a constitutional government explicitly founded on the protection of human rights.
They do. But importantly, he explicitly rejects the view that the will of an individual or group is the primary source of rights or authority.
Rights come from somewhere deeper.
Yes, from natural law and ultimately God, not simply granted by the state or popular will. This reinforces the idea that the legitimacy of the state depends on alignment with that deeper moral order.
Got it.
He concludes this section saying these demands show people's increased awareness of dignity and their desire to participate and see rights constitutionally protected.
That thoroughly covers the relationship between individuals and the state. Now let's zoom out to the international level, relations between states, which is part 3.
Right. He states clearly that just like individuals, states themselves are subjects of reciprocal rights and duties.
States have rights and duties too.
And these relations must also be governed by the same fundamental principles: truth, justice, willing cooperation, and freedom. The natural law that governs individuals must also regulate relations between political communities.
So nations have a moral obligation to each other based on the same inherent order that governs individuals.
Exactly. And leaders are bound by the moral order. Political leaders, when acting for their country, don't shed their natural dignity or humanity. They remain bound by the natural law.
They're still accountable.
Yes. Authority cannot be legitimately misdirected against the moral order. If it is, it loses its very raison d'etre. He quotes the Book of Wisdom, reminding rulers God will judge their works.
Leaders are accountable to a higher moral standard, even in international affairs, where pragmatism often seems to rule.
And the purpose of authority between states, just like within states, is the common good, in this case, the international common good.
A global common good.
It's imperative to recognize and observe the moral order in international relations. He quotes Pope Pius XII, emphasizing that international order must be founded on the unshakable rock of the moral law.
So the same pillars, truth, justice, charity, as cooperation and freedom, should govern how nations interact.
Starting with truth. It requires eliminating racial discrimination and recognizing the equality of states in dignity.
All states are equal in dignity.
Yes. Every state has the right to exist, develop, possess means, lead its own development, have a good name and respect. And crucially, wealth doesn't grant a right to impose will. It grants a greater responsibility to help others.
With great power comes great responsibility, essentially.
You could put it that way. Superior development should mean greater contribution to progress, not domination. There's no natural superiority among nations.
That's a direct challenge to power politics. Equality and mutual respect are presented as moral imperatives, regardless of a nation's strength.
Yes. He also addresses propaganda. Use communication impartially for understanding. Highlighting your own nation is fine, but reject methods violating truth, justice, or injuring other nations' reputations.
Truthfulness and fairness in international communication are part of this moral framework.
Moving to justice, it requires recognizing rights and fulfilling duties. States have rights like existence, self-development.
And duties.
Their duty is to safeguard these rights for others and avoid violation. cannot improve yourself by injuring or oppressing others. He quotes St. Augustine, "Kingdoms without justice are just mighty bands of robbers."
Wow, strong words applied to states.
Yeah.
Justice between nations means respecting sovereignty and refraining from harm.
And resolving conflicts. Clashes of interest must be settled humanely, not by force or deceit. Requires mutual assessment, objective investigation, equitable reconciliation.
A clear call for diplomacy and peaceful negotiation over violence.
He specifically addresses the treatment of minorities. Checking their vitality or growth is a grave injustice. Extinction efforts are condemned.
Protecting minority rights.
Justice is served when authorities improve conditions, language, culture, traditions, economy, but he has a caution. Minorities should avoid unduly magnifying their characteristics or putting group interests above universal values.
A balance there, too.
Yes. Be reasonable, recognize advantages, associate, share customs, avoid disaffection that stifles development.
A nuanced perspective, acknowledging rights while encouraging integration.
Then, active solidarity. States must pool resources, material and spiritual, through collaboration, economic, social, political, cultural.
Work together.
The state's good is linked to the universal common good. Join forces when individual efforts fail, but with care not to harm others.
So collaboration and mutual assistance are moral duties, but respecting each nation's integrity.
Yes. He also talks about contacts between races within nations, encouraging positive interaction and reciprocity. Prohibiting it flouts the spirit of the age. We share common elements beyond distinctions.
Promoting harmony among diverse ethnic groups within a country is part of the global vision.
And the need for balance globally, land, inhabitants, resources, capital. Imbalances require collaboration, facilitating circulation of goods, capital, manpower.
But ideally,
Bring work to workers to avoid uprooting people from their homes and culture.
prioritizing strategies that keep communities together.
The encyclical then turns to political refugees. He expresses deep anguish for exiles and their suffering.
A major issue then and now.
He says their plight is proof. Rulers sometimes restrict freedom excessively, even deny the right to liberty. A reversal of order, where authority should protect freedom.
Seeing refugees as a symptom of failed governance and rights violations.
Yes. He affirms the rights of refugees. They are persons. Rights must be recognized. They don't lose rights with lost citizenship.
They're still human beings.
They have a right to enter a country for a better life. The receiving state has a duty to help. He commends efforts based on solidarity and charity.
A very clear and strong statement on humane treatment and rights of refugees.
And then comes one of the most pointed sections, the arms race.
A huge concern in 63.
He expresses deep distress at vast armament stocks, calls the policy a huge financial outlay, burden on people, hindering aid to developing countries.
It drains resources.
He critiques the belief that peace needs an equal balance of armaments as paradoxical, arguing it actually causes stockpiling and competition, especially with atomic weapons.
The logic of deterrence leads to escalation.
He saw the arms race not just as dangerous, but as a moral failure and a drain on resources desperately needed elsewhere. He describes the fear and danger vividly.
Constant threat.
People live in fear, the weapons exist, war could start by chance, even testing is dangerous.
A clear-eyed view of the existential threat.
This leads to the urgent need for disarmament. Justice, reason, dignity demand the arms race cease. Stocks reduced all around and simultaneously. Nuclear weapons banned, general agreement with effective mutual control.
Complete, verified, multilateral disarmament, a very strong position.
But, he argues, this needs a soul-deep change. Disarmament must reach men's very souls, banish fear and anxiety, replace the principle of equal arms with mutual trust.
Trust, not fear.
He's confident this is achievable, dictated by common sense, desirable, fruitful.
So real peace isn't just about treaties and inspections. It's about transforming the underlying human condition of fear and suspicion into trust and understanding.
Exactly. He offers 3 motives for peace based on reason. 1. Reason itself dictates relations based on truth, justice, cooperation, not force. 2. The universal desire to be free of the war threat. 3. The fruitfulness of peace, its immense advantages, quoting Pius XII. Nothing is lost by peace. Everything may be lost by war.
Compelling arguments, intellect, hope, Pragmatism.
He makes a direct appeal for a rational and dignified course, begs mankind and rulers to spare no effort, calls on men of wisdom to think seriously about adjusting relations based on trust, sincerity, fulfilling obligations, find agreements leading to lasting treaties.
A direct plea to leaders and thoughtful people everywhere.
And relations between states must be regulated in liberty. No unjust oppression or interference. Help others develop their own awareness, enterprise, initiative.
Respecting sovereignty and agency.
This leads into helping underdeveloped countries. Common Origin Fellowship unites all, reiterates appeal for wealthy nations to assist poorer ones.
Aid as a moral imperative.
But assistance must preserve freedom. Help must guarantee the freedom of receiving nations. They must feel they play the major role, bear the main burden. Aid should be partnership, not control.
Empowering, not dominating.
Wealthier states must respect national identity, repudiate domination. This contributes to a world community where nations work equally for prosperity.
Mutual respect, not donor-client.
Finally, he returns to negotiation over arms. Men increasingly convinced disputes need negotiation, not arms.
Why?
Partly due to terrifying weapons, fear of consequences. War no longer makes sense for justice. Nations pile arms for deterrence, but hope lies in contact negotiation.
Dialogue can overcome fear.
Recognizing natural ties, letting love, not fear, dominate relations. Love draws men together.
A realistic acknowledgement of deterrence coupled with a hopeful vision. That brings us to part 4, the relationship of states with the world community.
Okay, the ultimate level of global order. He highlights global interdependence. Science, tech, increased collaboration, resources, travel, info, relations across borders grow, a world economy emerges.
Everything's connected.
National progress, security, peace linked globally. States cannot act in isolation. No state can pursue interests alone or develop fully alone. Prosperity is interconnected.
This interconnectedness presents a challenge for the existing structure of international relations.
It does. He discusses the inadequacy of modern states acting alone. Unity of human family demands a universal common good. Past methods, diplomacy, treaties, insufficient for today's global problems like peace, security.
National governments aren't enough.
Their authority isn't influential enough globally. The structure is unequal to the task of promoting the common good of all peoples. Common good needs effective authority.
And the logical, perhaps radical conclusion he draws from this.
The need for global public authority. Universal problems need authority with coextensive power. Organization means a worldwide sphere of activity. The moral order demands such authority.
A global authority isn't just practical, it's a moral requirement. How should it be set up?
Crucially, it must be by free consent of all nations, not force. Force breeds fear, undermines effectiveness. Nations are sensitive about equality. Authority must be fair, impartial, dedicated to the common good of all.
Freely agreed upon, legitimate, impartial, and its priority.
Recognizing, respecting, safeguarding, promoting human rights. Human rights are the core of the global common good it serves. It can act directly or create conditions for states to act.
Even globally, the individual person remains central.
And the principle of subsidiarity applies globally.
Meaning?
Its special function.
Yes.
Solve problems affecting the universal common good too difficult for individual states. It should not limit state action or take their functions. Its purpose. Create world conditions for states, citizens, groups to act with greater security.
So it supplements, supports, doesn't replace national governments.
Yes. He connects this to modern developments, specifically the UN, notes its founding, aims of peace, friendly relations, sees the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as far-sighted.
A step in the right direction.
Yes, an approach to world juridical political ordering, a solemn recognition of dignity and rights. He expresses hope the UN structure methods match tasks, become an effective safeguard of personal rights. Increased public interest in global affairs is encouraging.
That provides the vision for global structures. The final section, part 5, shifts to pastoral exhortations and a call to action. What is Pope John XXIII calling people, particularly Catholics, to do?
A clear call to public life. Exhorts Catholics to be actively involved, not just locally, but for the entire human race. Use faith love to ensure institutions facilitate human betterment, natural and supernatural.
Faith isn't meant to be passive. It's meant to actively transform the world.
Exactly. And competence and involvement are needed. Good intentions aren't enough. Need scientific competence, technical capacity, professional experience. Involve yourselves in institutions, influence from within.
Virtue and skill.
But beyond competence, fully integrating faith is essential. Skill alone insufficient. Daily life must conform to truth, justice, love, freedom. Temporal activities follow own laws and moral order conscience, integrate spiritual values with professions.
A call for coherence, living your beliefs consistently.
He notes the cleavage problem, especially in Christian states. Institutions advance, but often slightly affected by Christian motives. Reason. Cleavage between faith and practice. Need inner unity, faith as light, love as motivation.
The Sunday versus Monday gap.
Precisely. Another factor, inadequate education. Secular study outweighs religious. Need complete instruction integrating moral religious values with science tech. Teach how to carry out obligations.
Lifelong learning, connecting faith to life.
He emphasizes the need for prudence. Applying principles to concrete situations requires prudence, the queen of the virtues. Discerning degrees forms of application, difficult in a fast age.
It takes wisdom.
Don't relax efforts. What's achieved is insufficient. Daily need to make social reality conform to justice. Every day offers opportunities, industry, unions, law, politics.
An ongoing, difficult task requiring consistent effort.
He addresses relations with non-Catholics. Principles based on natural rights invite cooperation with separated Christians and reasonable men, and men of natural moral integrity.
Collaborate with people of goodwill.
Act as Catholics, don't compromise faith morality, but show understanding, unselfishness, loyalty, and cooperating for good objects.
Finding common ground without compromising core beliefs.
He says, distinguish error and the person erring. The person doesn't lose dignity, can still seek truth. Erring today may embrace truth tomorrow. Collaboration can provide occasion for conversion.
A very compassionate and hopeful perspective on dialogue.
And distinguish false philosophies from undertakings inspired by them. Philosophy fixed, undertakings change. Undertakings may have good elements conforming to reason aspirations.
Judge initiatives on their practical merits.
So prudence and cooperation is key. Meetings previously useless may be fruitful now. Whether how to agree is matter for prudence. For Catholics, decision rests with leaders requires knowledge of church teaching.
Practical collaboration requires careful discernment.
He offers a caution against impetuous calls for revolution. Seeing need for reform, some call for wholesale revolution. But nature's law is gradual growth.
Evolution, not revolution.
Improvement done slowly, deliberately from within. Quoting Pius XII, salvation justice is well-designed policy of development, not uprooting. Hot-headedness destroys, inflames passions, requires rebuilding on ruins.
Emphasizing building up society rather than overthrow.
He speaks of the immense task remaining, serious obligation for high-principled people everywhere, establish new relationships under truth, justice, charity, freedom at all levels, exalted task for true peace.
A call for dedicated, long-term commitment.
Too few do it, deserve praise, calls for more Christians, love, duty. Every Christian a light, nucleus of love, leavened by union with God.
It sounds like a call for many people across society.
And brings it back to the core, peace in the heart. World peace won't exist until peace reigns in the heart of each person, preserving God's ordained order within. Quotes St. Augustine, true peace is mind submitting to God, conquering passions.
So inner peace and order are the necessary foundation for outer peace and order.
The encyclical concludes with a heartfelt appeal for peace, born from deep longing, his duty to further this common good. Peace is empty word without order based on truth, justice, charity, freedom.
The four pillars again.
And human resources alone insufficient. God's aid needed.
A humble recognition of the scale of the task.
Then a powerful call to prayer, especially in Easter season. Christ brought peace. Pray fervently. Christ banish what endangers peace. Transform people into witnesses of truth, justice, love. Enlighten rulers. Inflame desires to break barriers. Strengthen love. Understand. Pardon. May peace flower reign.
A moving conclusion, anchoring the pursuit of peace in prayer and faith.
Finally, the Pope's blessing on all, especially lowly, needy, faithful, and all men, women of goodwill.
Wow. Reflecting on this document, written over 60 years ago, amidst a specific crisis, it's remarkable how comprehensive it is. Starting from creation's order, defining dignity and rights, laying out ethics for governments and nations, proposing global authority, all resting on truth, justice, charity, freedom, and ultimately inner peace and divine aid.
It truly is. And the consistency, always circling back to the dignity of the human person as the measure of all things, is powerful. It doesn't offer quick fixes, but a profound moral grounding for any lasting peace.
In thinking about our world today, human rights challenges, inequality, conflict, the search for global cooperation, the principles in Pacem and Terris feel incredibly relevant. The call for trust over fear, negotiation, verified disarmament, concern for refugees, development respecting sovereignty. It all speaks to contemporary issues.
It really does. It challenges conventional politics by insisting the moral order is foundational, not secondary.
So if peace depends on order, and order depends on upholding the dignity and rights of every human person at every level, here's a thought for you, the listener, to ponder. What single practical step in your own sphere of influence, family, workplace, community, how you engage with broader issues, could you take this week to better reflect that truth?
How could you live out truth, justice, charity, and freedom tangibly?
Especially by recognizing and upholding the inherent dignity of those around you, particularly those you might disagree with or those who are vulnerable.
Engaging with these ideas really does require that personal reflection and commitment.
It certainly does. Thank you for guiding us through this extraordinary source material.
My pleasure. It was a deep dive indeed.